Okay, I think we're live now. So hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Yes, we are. Okay. It didn't look like it was live for a second. My name is Francesca Dubrock, and I'm the Chief Curator at the Anchorage Museum. The Anchorage Museum is situated on Dena'ina homeland, and I would like to offer gratitude for centuries of Dena'ina care and for their ongoing leadership and stewardship of these beautiful lands and waters. Last month, we opened How to Survive, which is an exhibition that considers the idea of survival through hope and care and asks how gestures and practices of love, protection, nurturing, and sharing can help us face the climate crisis. It includes artwork by 16 artists from across the globe, as well as an installation of cultural belongings from our collection, a community climate archive, and a materials library. It was conceived as both an exhibition to think about climate challenges in a more hopeful and aspirational way, but also as an opportunity to experiment on the museum practice side of things with the way we make exhibitions and try to find more sustainable working practices, materials, and approaches. So today we are super lucky to have two extraordinary artists with us, Martha Atienza and Ellie Schmidt. Both artists consider care for waters and communities in myriad ways through their artworks and practices, and I'm really excited to get to talk to both of them. So Ellie Schmidt is an interdisciplinary artist grounded in feminist theory and marine ecology. Her practice includes nonfiction film, large-scale woodcuts, underwater photography, installation, sculpture, and comic poetry. By overlaying women's stories with instances of environmental degradation, she seeks to understand the emotional landscapes of love and loss. She holds a BA from Carleton College and an MFA from the University of Michigan. In 2022, she received a Fulbright grant to research stories of female fishermen in Fiji. She is currently studying a PhD in media arts and practice at the School of Cinematic Arts at the University of Southern California. And we also have Martha Atienza, who lives and works in Batayan Island, Philippines. Her creative practice is rooted in her ecological and cultural concerns as she studies the intricate interplay between local traditions, human subjectivity, society, and the environment. Atienza's multicultural upbringing has shaped her artistic focus, which is primarily expressed through installation and video art as a means of documenting and questioning pressing issues in her direct environment, often taking an almost sociological nature. Her work testifies to her commitment to art as a medium for social engagement and dialogue. Her work has been exhibited globally at the Istanbul Biennial, Bangkok Art Biennial, Honolulu Biennial, and Asia Pacific Triennial of Contemporary Art. She's also won numerous prizes that I won't go into here, but she's a very celebrated artist. And in 2022, her solo exhibition, The Protectors, inaugurated Silverlands, New York. So the way this is going to go is that we'll have Ellie speak a little bit about her practice, and then Martha will share a little bit about her practice, and then we'll open it up for dialogue and questions. So if you have any questions for the artists, please don't hesitate, don't be shy, throw them in the chat, and we will discuss them once they're done sharing their work. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and share if that's okay. Okay, so please just let me know if it looks weird. So I just wanted to start off by saying that it's a great honor and privilege to be here with Martha and with Fran and with everyone else who's tuning in. So thank you so much for having me for this online event. I wanted to start this talk with this image by photographer Wayne Levin, who works out of the Big Island of Hawaii. Wayne Levin has been a big influence on my work ever since I was introduced to his work in college. His work is incredibly physical and participatory, as you can see by this beautiful image. And in the last decade, I've been really drawn to these ideas of having a physical relationship with a place, having a long-term relationship with a place, and using my whole body and not just my eyes and my ears as a tool for sensing and for art making. And I think Wayne Levin really exemplifies this with his work. So I was born in Denver, Colorado. And as kids, my family spent a lot of time in the summers, we would go to Nantucket, Massachusetts, where we spent most of our days at the beach. And as a kid, like lots of kids, I loved playing with minnows and making sand sculptures, and I just loved playing on the beach with my siblings. And this affinity for the beach and for the ocean has continued for my whole life. And I think it's because I spent these sort of magical summer times with the ocean. So in high school and college years, I took this wonderful plein air painting class with a teacher named Robert Head, who is a plein air painter in Nantucket. And Robert taught me to see the landscape and the whole landscape, and to try and translate it through paint. And so for plein air, it was really important to be out in the elements and interacting with them in order to create art. And I think that mentality of the outdoor studio has stayed with me with my work ever since. In college, I was really lucky to study abroad in Australia. We studied marine ecology, and it was super fun. I learned a lot. I did study art in college, but I was somehow able to do this science study abroad. And I decided on this trip that I wanted to dedicate my work to marine conservation and have a relationship with science. And so this is still a big inspiration for me. I love reading about biology and sort of being an amateur, having amateur interest in biology. And this is something that I'm still kind of questioning and probing with my work, is how art can relate to that. So after college in 2015, I went to Sitka, Alaska for the first time, for a summer residency called Sitka Fellows. And the Sitka Fellows was just for a few weeks, but my friend Barrett, who is one of my best friends from college, she grew up in Sitka, and she's the one who told me about the residency, and I think she even pulled a few strings to help me get into it. But that first summer was really wonderful. We snorkeled as much as we could. You can tell from this photo that we didn't have all the right gear, so we didn't have like hoods or gloves. And so I would never swim like that now in Sitka, but at the time it was really fun. And yeah, it was just one of those like really formative summers. I saw things underwater that I never dreamed would exist in Alaska. And it was also one of those magical times. Oops. It was one of those magical times where you're living by yourself independently for the first time, and the friends that you spend time with become like your family. And so here are some more photos from that era. Ever since that first summer, I've kept up a pretty consistent practice of underwater photography. It feels like this never-ending process because it's so variable, like it changes day to day and season to season and year to year. And so it's been really interesting and fulfilling to continue it over the years. So here's just a few more photos. So as we snorkeled in Sitka, we learned over and over again how therapeutic the cold water can be. The cold is really hard for me. I actually really don't like the cold at all. But every time I swim in the Alaskan Ocean, afterwards I feel very physically and mentally just healthy and well. And the more so, the colder it is. And so I think of it as like having the opposite effect of depression, where the swimming makes me feel inspired and optimistic and rejuvenated. And it's not only been really important for my art, but it's been really important for my life to have this practice of cold water, and the benefits from that. So here's a few more photos from those years. So since 2015 up until around the pandemic in 2020, my main source of income was working on commercial commercial fishing boats as a deckhand, and especially this boat, the FV Igata, with skipper Eric Jordan, who fishes out of Sitka. And this experience working as a deckhand was really formative for me as well, because it gave me this, for the first time, this really close interaction with wild animals and with the landscape that I had never had before. I also felt like I was able to see a little bit of the front lines of climate change, where people are having these really intimate and important interfaces with wild animals and wild places. I just love the colors and patterns of these sea cucumbers. So commercial fishing has continued to be a really important inspiration and subject matter for my work. I've also made a few documentaries about fishing rights and subsistence rights in Sitka and elsewhere, especially around the Sitka Sacro herring fishery, which is sort of like it's a very important issue, and it's still ongoing, of course, but yeah, I'm kind of glossing over it in this presentation, but it's very important and interesting issue for me. I wanted to include some of these comic poems that I have also been doing over the years. I call these comic poems, they are comics because they have the image and the text, but I think of them as poetry because they're somewhat abstract, they're not very narratively straightforward, and they're usually pretty sad. And each one sort of looks at a relationship in my life in the context of a landscape, and the medium of poetry allows me to think a little bit more abstractly and emotionally about these sort of disparate ideas and put them together. And I think I've learned a lot about my relationship with place through these comic poems. One thing that I think about a lot is I think we have a lot of language when it comes to romantic love, like poems and rom-coms and movies, novels. But I think sometimes when we think about our relationship with a place, sometimes we can come up short in terms of what language to use. And so sometimes I found it to be interesting to just overlay those two and steal language from romantic relationships and kind of superimpose them on the land and see if it resonates at all. And sometimes it doesn't. So in 2020, I went to Michigan for my MFA. It was the pandemic. It was a really hard time. I felt very separated from my friends and my community. And so I started doing these projects where I swam every day in the river. And I thought of the swimming as the art project in itself and everything else more as documentation. And this was the time in my life when the cold water swimming was really important, just because it was the pandemic and it was a difficult time. But I found myself making these pieces that were just pieces that I needed to experience. So they were very gentle to the viewer. They just sort of created this therapeutic space. They were very conceptually simple and asked very little from the viewer. So this one is about swimming in the Huron River, and it just has these videos of lily pads and like underwater sounds. Another project I wanted to briefly touch on. So this is Water Letters, which is a project that I worked on with my friend Ray Jong in Michigan. And Ray is a brilliant artist, and basically just over a winter we sent each other letters and poems through the mail, and collected water in these little vials. And so this project was very simple, but it was really nice, and I think it helped me think about these sort of abstract ideas that I was learning in school about how water moves through and across bodies, and thinking about compassion as a value system for change and the sacredness of water. And this is the final installation. It's sort of another room where you can rest. We made a little zine, and there's some video and audio pieces too. Okay, so this brings me to the piece in the How to Survive show. This quote I thought is nice. Technically, it's just C, yet each wave is slightly different. And I thought this quote speaks to how I feel, or just what it's like to interact with a landscape. Like you can go back to the same place many times, but each interaction is individual. And so for this piece, I just wanted to create a really long film about tide pools and give people time to experience them. So the filming for this project was lasted over 2 summers and 1 winter. My friend Taylor White, who is a marine biologist in Sitka, told me about some special secret tide pool spots, and there's a correlation between intensity of wave action and biodiversity. And so most of these places were really intense places and hard to get to with a boat or by swimming. And so the process of making this film was very physical and super fun. It was very challenging, but very rewarding to go back to these places and develop more of a long-term relationship with them. But sometimes I joked with my friends that I felt like I should have gotten a PE credit for this project. So these are some GIFs of the types of video that I was collecting. My dad helped me make this underwater tripod to make slightly more stable footage, but it was really challenging with all the waves and water action. So when I was thinking of this project, I wanted to make an installation with the video and sort of trick people into staying for much longer than they would normally stay. And so I was thinking of how to do this, and I had this idea for doing these like comfortable hammocks that people could lie in. And I was brainstorming ways to present them or how to color them. My advisor suggested tie-dye to kind of match the colors and shapes of the underwater landscapes, and I liked that idea a lot. And I realized that my mom is an expert tie-dye artist, and so she flew out to Ann Arbor and she helped me dye these big swaths of fabric, which was a really fun project. After editing footage for a long time, it's so nice to just do something with the hands. And so here's the hammocks being installed to test. And this is how the final installation looked for my MFA project. It included some little fiberglass fountains and some party lights. And the installation as it is now in the Anchorage Museum, the hammocks were turned into these large bean bags, and there's much more, it's like surround screens, which I think is really nice. And then just the last thing I'll touch on is the current project I'm working on is, as Fran mentioned, I was in Fiji last year researching stories of female fishermen and scientists and divers trying to come up with ways to protect local reefs and local fishing rights, both against climate change and from offshore foreign fisheries. And so that project is, I think it's going to be very complicated, but I think it will be a film. And so that's what I'm currently working on. Yeah, and that's what I have. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Ellie, for sharing that. Martha, if you want to share your screen, we can go into your presentation and then come back together to chat.
Thank you, Ellie. I have so many things now that I think, oh, I would like to show this other work that I did. But anyways, I'll do my best with sharing, and then maybe we could later on with the Q&A hit each other. I have a presentation here. Just a minute. I will just. Sorry. Yeah, you can see it.
Yes, looks great.
So, yeah, I don't know what flow this will go, but let's see. And then you can just stop me, Francesca, if I go too long. Marta Atienza, thank you for the introduction. This is an image of Nungtunyo Turib, who is from Mambakayao Dako. And he's one of the fisher folks that I've been working with for a couple of years now, actually since also right at the pandemic started. It's a small island in Bantayan. Bantayan is a small group of islands in the center of the Philippines. And fisher folks in the Philippines face a lot of problems, including not just the rising of the seas, rising of the sea temperature, and their food catch is really affected. The marine life is in trouble, but also they are facing problems of dispossession because of tourism coming in and real estate prices going up and islands and coastal areas being worth so much. They're being moved, and I'll share a little bit more about that. But after a couple of years of, or 2 years of working together really on issues facing them, I reminded them that I'm an artist, and we're going to share what we do now. And maybe I would like to film one of you guys on the boat, just like you always travel between islands. They stand when they are alone and they go fast. And who would like to represent your community? And Tonyo came dressed beautifully. He's got the banana leaf crown, and we watched the footage together and we practiced a little bit. And I did it in slow motion, and he wore this beautiful banana leaves, and everything was moving. Anyways, I would like, maybe could have time to share it later. But it's really about, people should not be owning the sea or the land, but we should be protecting it. So we're in the center of the Philippines, the northern tip of Bantayan Island, so between the Tanyan Strait and the Visayan Sea. Bantayan is a small group of islands within the Philippine archipelago. And so the issues we face really is the dispossession of land and sea, as I mentioned. Politicians use laws for their own profit interests, not all, but it's a problem. Residents are made to leave Bantayan in search for jobs, especially outside of the country or in cities. Tourism is mistakenly seen as a solution, and the impact of environmental damage and climate change and social dislocation due to the uneven income, especially when people start working overseas. So this is an example of where fisher folks are being moved. They're being moved to housing projects inland. And so there is this drastic disconnection from their place and their work and their culture. This is like 700 families living here. And since the super typhoon Yolanda, like 9,000 families have been moved already. We are a large population. We are about 120,000. But it's still a lot of people being moved and still being moved at the moment. And of course, there's another side to it, and it's really climate change and moving them off the coast for safety. But there's also a very direct correlation between commercial interests. So this is what the northern tip coastline looks like. That's where my father is originally from. That's where I'm from. This is where I started with my projects. That's Madridejos. And this is very typical to see on our coastlines of remaining of houses and trees. And people do talk about it, but the thing is with the rising sea is that there are so many other economic urgent problems that people are not focusing on climate change really. So it's kind of a maybe become a little bit of my role also to talk about these issues with people. And also by using the video camera, it becomes more real of if I'm been documenting the coastlines for the last years where people can really see how much we're moving inland. So, since moving back and working on Bantayan in 2010, the question really has been for me, how can I be useful, Feel like I had no choice but to see how I can become useful where I come from. So, how can art tackle social, environmental, and economic issues really? Because they're all connected. The image in the background is actually of an installation I did. I should have put more of how my works actually look like, but maybe that's for the future. I'm just gonna jump and not read that, but I started in 2010 where I tried to understand my father, who was a seafarer, and he left the island in the 70s, and that's how he met my Dutch mother. And I wanted to understand how he was looking back at the place where he came from. How was he looking back at the island, and his own culture. So I went, I filmed, the people I filmed are usually people I know, I grew up with. The first ship I went on was filming my younger brother who was working on a riverboat in Europe, carrying coal. And this ship that you see now, it was going from Singapore, Thailand, and Malaysia. It was exciting to see the guys working, but it was also a reality shock because I had found all this old 8mm footage of my father and my parents being on ships together. And in the 70s, it was very different because there was enough time for loading and unloading for them to kind of interact with a new culture and meet new people. But nowadays, it's all automated. So the guys never really get off the ships, or if they get on the port, it's very strict. So there is not really a kind of meeting point of different cultures. So I had a very romantic idea and then ended up being on cargo ships, kind of like factories on water. I'd done that for a couple of years. And in the meantime, when I would go back to the island, I would share the images to, the guys, my friends' families, their wives. And I realized how little they knew about the work and about what they were doing overseas and the dangers as well. And then I also realized that I should be filming the men that stay behind that are fisher folks. And these are people that grew up together. And also, with my own background as my father being a sea captain, the kind of dislocation that happens within our community with the gap in income. So, I tried to, it grew. I mean, it wasn't planned, but it kind of grew from just showing it on a laptop in houses and having conversations to kind of having all the friends and neighbors and everybody watching the footage and then having, these conversations. And sometimes these conversations are quite difficult. What do women do when their men are overseas for long periods of time? The dangers of fishing. Why do fisher folks want their children to become international seafarers? What's happening with our seas? So it was 2 years of really talking about difficult things, but also having a good time still, but it was quite heavy. So we got more and more formal with the conversations and the dialogues. We have a microphone because there were just so many children and we couldn't hear each other. So these were mainly compressor divers and their families. And then in the process, I also learned that the women really had so much to say. And they were really the ones taking over the microphones, talking about, like for fisher folks, when there's bad weather, there's no, the damage to the sea and how they are affected at home, trying to, make sure there's food on the table. And after 2 years, we did an installation at the high school, but also in the church plaza, and like 600 people gathered. But the reason why I want to share this project, because it's really kind of the base of how I work now. And I feel like this is the project that started that never stopped. There you can see my family. Actually, my aunt is sitting right there. But you know, when we all sat together for about a week and showing the installation and having these conversations and having international seafarers and their families and fisher folks and their families come together and really talk about, these issues of why are we not a community anymore, and what are these issues that we are facing. And it was, for me, that had an impact on me, this project, because when we were all sitting together, everybody was explaining things to each other and continuing the conversation. And I remember I wanted to put in this diagram because to continue the project, my brother and me, we work together. I work together with my family mainly. They have no choice. They're my free labor. No, I'm joking. And we tried to make this diagram of explaining why these things, these practices was art. Everything that we were doing, we felt like it was the art practice. So working with community, and the base really being knowledge. And in 2019, I'm going to jump to the future. We created an official organization called Goodland, really to represent fisher folks and farmers on Bantayan Island and create long-term solutions, really, by having these different collaborations, also with the local government unit, with leaders. Yeah. I'm just not going to read and show the images. So one of the projects we did many projects, but this was, I was very lucky to be asked by the Istanbul Biennial to create a work, and I was commissioned to do a work. And so the idea that I came up with together with everyone was that, we've been working together for years, and how were we gonna make obvious this, or really give a platform for fisher folks on Bantayan. So we created the first Fisher Folks Day of Bantayan Island, where we would get everybody together. This was still during the pandemic, so we were only able to get fisher folk leaders. So we had 37 leaders, and we organized it together with the local government unit, and to really create a platform where we have government, we have leaders coming together and really talk about how we can move forward with all these issues regarding, in relationship to the sea. The sea is damaged, but we need the fisher folks, we need their knowledge, we need them for the protection, and we need their input. So it's still in process, not saying that this is done and this was, there's still so much to do, but at least it's a start. This is the work actually that you're showing at Anchorage at the moment, the video of this. But it was very emotional, actually. Right when the parade started and we had been organizing this and practicing all of our cameras, I work mainly with young people that I've taught how to film from the beginning. So I have I have Robert and Seth that film with me, and they'd been practicing the drone for a month. And when the parade started, it was raining so hard. I was the only one holding a camera because I had a big hat on, and I was able to still document it. But we were all crying because rain is a good sign, and it really meant something. Here's Noctonio as well, of course, always starring. Sorry, I'll go forward. Here. So, this is kind of what it looked like, the collaboration. I have the mayor beside me, the head of the Coast Guard, the head of the Marine Police, the head of the police, all coming together and talking about how we can move forward and help each other. And we were able to create an official or an ordinance, making Fisher Folks Day a yearly event. And so still figuring out, like, how can this event really help, not just give importance to fisher folks, but to really, give them a seat at the table with decision making. So, this kind of, I always draw all these diagrams of how then do I as an artist become make things happen for the people I work with, my friends, my family, and my, on Bantayan. And I've really started to see my practice as a kind of methodology. So this organization that we're setting up, that's why I'm actually here in Palawan right now, trying to use this methodology as a base, as a way of working for our organization. And so right now, we're kind of seeing and continuing all the work that has been done with fisher folks and farmers as an archive. And now we're working together with the communities themselves to create their archives. So, a lot of young people are involved, and they are figuring out how they would like to document their stories, but then also connect them to their dreams. So, really part of the process is dreaming. Not just identifying what our issues are, but where do we want to go? Where do they want to go? How could this archive become useful? And so, we've got young people that are my neighbors. We live in the watershed that have been making like a book of all their native plant species, trees. And so that then has become a base to make it a protected area. If we could establish if we could show that fisherfolk culture has a worth, I don't know how to say this properly, then maybe they wouldn't be moved like that. Maybe if we could show how complex and alive the culture is, we could protect it. So so it has been quite an emotional journey as well, because we're having these conversations about how we could move forward with it. But this could connect also to a legal side of things, of keeping people on their land, and who owns the land, right? Anyways, the resiliency building is really, that's where everybody wants to be. Everybody wants to have the right to stay on their land, to be healthy, to have families, to and that's really that resiliency building. That's the words that, of course, I'm just learning by diving into this more. I need to find proper wording to explain things. Anyways, so Tig Panalipod started, but it's continuing now. And so together with my brother, we've kind of tried to find the right wordings for what this is that we're doing. And it's an archive-based counter mapping of 2 places on Bantayan. So we've chosen specifically to work with 2 communities that we already have relationships with, or that we're part of. And so it's material documentation, but it's also really a way of thinking about our islands. And this is one place. This is Mabakayao Dako. It's a small island, the one that I talked to, where Nong Tonyo is from. As you can see, the coastline is eaten away. Fishing is a problem, and that's really their main source. And that's a complicated issue, that has to do with commercial fishing getting in. People become desperate, and they themselves do illegal activities. They themselves destroy the sea when they're desperate. So it's not very easy to talk about solutions for this. And that's why I think Goodland is very important to set up, is to create these partnerships with different people with different knowledge that can work with very complicated issues and solutions together with the people. Anyways, still in the process of that. But they have a marine protected area, and this was really because I'm so proud. Young people there, we taught them how to use the camera, and we thought they'd make like a love story film, but they made a film about wanting to protect their reef. And so we shared the film, and the leaders saw the film, and they were quite emotional, and it actually had an impact on creating an ordinance making this an official marine protected area. So these little milestones really show that maybe all these years spent trying to do work is worth it, and we should continue, you know? And then the other area is the watershed area where I actually live, in the center of the island. People don't talk about our fresh water source because we don't have mountains. We only have a water lens. And so if we're gonna, we need to know what our capacity is. So when all of the tourists are when they're promoting it so much as a tourist island, we need to think about that. And the people living on these lands in the watershed area, we are the protectors of the water. And so to really explain that, because they're quite big abstract ideas for people sometimes. And what does that mean? You know, what could people themselves have a say in what happens to water or their area? Can we really protect our area? So these are the conversations we're having through the archive. And this is kind of what it looks like. And I really like this. This is something that my brother Jake has really been kind of working on. And this, you know, remembering as an act of resistance. Because if we, you know, it's very powerful when young people themselves are talking to their elders and are trying to understand their history and their place and who they are. And so they're doing this now with, you know, cameras or just by having the conversations. And this is what it looks like as the process of making the archive. And this is kind of a combination of dream and what really happens is that, you know, this is where we have our weekly meetings. They've set up a savings club. We've done it where, you know, we all put our savings together. And then it kind of leads to, you know, a space where people talk about what they would want in the future, you know, maybe create a co-op, they're mostly farmers there, they own their lands, what kind of production they would want to do, you know, how do they connect it to their forest rehabilitation there? Anyways, I just thought I'd show an overall, and this is what the Savings Club looks like every week. You know, it really creates us, because even the question community, what is community really? Do we still have community? Because most of the time, we could even maybe say that we've kind of lost our sense of community. Yeah, I don't need to, yeah, I mean, this is an official thing, but you know, the goal really is to get people together and to think about the future. I think dreaming is a very important part of maybe the role that, let's say, you know, art could have. And also, I'll just read this, it's here already. Further resolve the complex way that art is a necessary, functional, participatory, and creative process for change, and foster community participation as a collaborative process from which visions of the future emerge, and make visible cultural knowledge rendered invisible by development ideals of modernity. And then I will just end it here.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Martha. I have so many questions and so many things to say about what you both shared in your presentation. So thank you for that. Martha, I did just want to ask quickly, because I was thinking about it as you were talking. I think it's so brave how you kind of started sharing your work really openly with your community and inviting people to watch it, because I know sometimes, like with the people closest to you, it can be hard, especially when you're working in ways that might not be that familiar to people who are not looking at contemporary art very often.
It was really one of the reasons when I wanted to come back to Bantayan, because when I was studying in Holland, because I have a Dutch passport and I really wanted to go to the art school there, when I would, if I were able to go home, I would be obsessed with documenting my place and my friends. And, you know, I would do exhibits at the school and everyone thought it was great, but I also knew it was exotic. So it was really one of the reasons why I wanted to come back, really make work together with my friends, but really for them. Mm-hmm. And so that becomes more difficult, even though where my work is going now, you know, like how do you explain, like when we won the prize in Art Basel, and we won a prize, I didn't even know it existed. I didn't even know what Art Basel was. and it was great conversations and a lot of applauding. But when I came home, the situation was worse. And so that, I think, is really a motivation for Goodland, and how to also really maybe understand my role. I remember, I spent a lot of time with Yi Ilan, who is an amazing artist in Sabah, about, we being an enabler, or, how then do we use this position that we have going around to different places in the world? How do we use our voice, and how do we really create that impact at home,
Yeah. So you feel like your community, your family, the people you work with understand like the value of that now? Yeah.
Not all.
Yeah.
So that's a process, and that's very hard. That's why I really try, if we have the opportunity, if they can come along, that they come along, but that's really not that easy. But yeah, that's a difficult one still. Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess
Anyway.
I had another specific question, and then I'll ask some more open-ended ones for both of you. But in terms of kind of the organizing work that you all are doing, and it's amazing some of the partnerships it looks like you've been able to develop with different sectors. Where is like the resistance coming from, or have you come up against some really like negative challenges, like from the government or other agencies not liking what you're doing?
Maybe Ellie, you want to? I've been talking so much.
Wow, yeah, I just wanted to say, Martha, your talk was so inspiring, and I'm really moved by your methodology. I think, especially in school where I am right now, it's really easy to feel like the role of the artist is like this like philosophical, like abstract person, and it's amazing to see like the effects that you've had in your community. And like yeah, Fran, I
don't know if I have positive effects yet, though. I mean, you know what I mean? It's all, how do you say? It's all in process, and sometimes it looks, when you present it like this, it looks like, wow, you've achieved this and that, but it's so much complex on the ground, and then sometimes you feel like you're going nowhere, So it's, yeah, it's not as.
Yeah, I love the marine protected area. That's such an inspiring story.
Yeah, I was thinking of you. I wish we could have more time. So let's keep in touch, and then we could share more. I mean, you've been on the ships. That I want to hear more about. I mean, that relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. Fran, I haven't really worked that much with any like high level government people or anything, but the most pushback I've gotten is Alaska, Southeast especially, it's like very fishing oriented culture, and my herring piece was sort of very gently like critiquing the Sitka-Sacro fishery, and I think that just created a little bit of friction just from fishermen. Yeah, but that's it. I haven't come across anything beyond that.
So I wanted to ask you both, there are many questions I want to ask you, but one question that got brought up in the artist talk with Carolina and Aaron that I think brought us into a really interesting space was just thinking about sort of like the goal of creating a more sustainable exhibition. And I asked them about how they think about sustainability within their art practices, and like where they're at and where they'd like to be going. And through that question, we kind of started to unpack this word sustainability. So I recognize that like this may not be a word you choose to apply to your own practice, but I mean that on like a really practical level. Like we are showing digital works by both of you, and like Ellie, we repurposed those textiles from that you dyed with your mother to reupholster bean bags. So we're thinking about this in really practical terms with the exhibition, but I think also in more kind of and a sort of more emotive realm too, like wanting to prioritize our relationships with artists over the more transactional, just like, hey, we need a loan from you. Let's just ship up this object. So I'm just curious how you think about sustainability in your practice, or what's the word you choose to talk about that within your practice?
Ellie, you want to go first?
Sure. I think yeah, it's something that I struggle with a lot and think about a lot, both on the practical end and the more philosophical end. I do, I do think that a show like yours, like, or like ours, I guess, like, does the work of hopefully just like turning the dial a little bit culturally towards thinking about those issues. And so I think sometimes like the costs going into it, I think are good and worth it. I feel like my sustainability, like my art feels like this very like ideas space. And when I think about sustainability, it comes out more in my daily life, I guess. And my peers here at school have been questioning me, like, how can you, because I love like eating a certain way or like traveling a certain way. And they're asking me, like, how can that enter your work more? And so that's something I'm kind of questioning right now. I'm working on a piece about aquaculture in the future here, and it's kind of like melding together the practice and also the art of sustainability. So I know it's kind of a cop out, but that's my thoughts right now.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, that's the first thing that just keeps on popping in my mind. Sustainability is really how to keep everything going long term, myself, my practice, and then the community aspect. So I mean, right now the formula is kind of me, my practice, keeping the boat going. But for that to happen long term, that shouldn't be the formula, because if anything happens to me, or maybe people won't be interested in my work anymore. And so it shouldn't be reliant on that. It shouldn't be reliant on a biennial commission. So, and that's why I'm here right now, trying to get the coaching for that, on how to make this independent body really also financially, and also how to create opportunity for young people here on Bantayan that actually they have the heart and they have the dream. And I think they just need guidance and help to be part of something like this organization that could also give them jobs, like one of the kids, Ayman, he's from Mambacayao, and I'm so proud of him. There's finally a program for fisheries on the island, and he's one of the few really children of fisher folks that is of a fisherman that is joined the program. And I believe that he could be part of the solution. I think that's how we should be moving forward, and it makes me so sad when people think about fishermen becoming tour guides. It just really makes me so depressed, and it makes me angry. And sometimes I feel bad because when people with good intentions have conversations to me about it, I react very, but I really see a different kind of future, and I see the young people talk about a different kind of future, and I think we should go for that, and I hope like something like this could give them the opportunities to stay at home and help their own place and people. And that's really what pops in my mind when I think of sustainability. It's kind of and I think that's also been a problem with my practice, that maybe I'm too much focusing on this, and maybe I'm not spending enough time with the art production side. But it's just so one that I cannot. I was actually, last year we were doing strategic plannings with my cousin, who was just so sweet and giving all his time for it. But like we were trying to split it. And in December, like I was just I couldn't find myself anymore and didn't understand myself anymore. So now we're merging it again and really seeing it as a methodology, and that it is really that it really makes sense for it to be one, one practice. Anyways, yeah.
I did a little sketch of your tree because
Then my brother came up with the tree though, because I've been doing a lot of circles for a long time. And he said, what about a tree? I think it's more a tree because it has branches and then it bears fruits and, and then the fruit falls and then there's another tree. And I said, yeah, that's it.
No, I think that's a wonderful kind of way that you've braided everything together. And I really resonated also with what you said about remembering as an act of resistance, because I think a lot about that idea too, in terms of like our capacity to even understand climate change really relies on our ability to remember and trust the stories of elders and people who came before. So, and I also loved what you had to say about sustainability. I think just on the museum side of things, it's very easy to think of things in a very kind of like practical way, but something that we also came out of this exhibition considering is just that this idea really extends very much to people and like staff wellness and our ability to do this work now and in the future and kind of shift in the ways we want to, like, relies on us not burning out. It relies on how we think about time. And these are things that are not very kind of like sexy to talk about when you're thinking about exhibitions. But I think they're really important. And I see that being considered in the work that both of you do. So I appreciate that. I wanted to ask one last question. I know we're kind of short on time here, but since you both work so much with your families, which was something I hadn't really considered before pairing you, but there's so many others. I mean, you definitely need to find more time to talk after this. But I'm just curious to hear you each comment a little bit on the role of your relationship to past and future generations and how that informs your practice, and kind of tied into that is what right now is giving you hope for the future.
Martha, do you want
to go? Okay, I can, yeah. I think, working with young people gives me hope, because sometimes, because they can still dream, they can still imagine, and they still want to put in the, they still want to join the experiment. That really gives me hope, and connecting that to family. I mean, I think it's just something that already happened. My mom was always busy on the island. Tried to set up a hospital, and our house was like a hospital growing up. So I just feel like I continued that, and I would like to be that. I don't have children, but I would like to kind of be that for others, a safe space where you can have freedom of thought, and I think really art practice it's a way of thinking. It's creative thinking. I would not try to let anyone on the islands be artists, but I would like to just incorporate that way of thinking. And I wish that the schools would work more like that. So maybe the future is setting up a school, Yeah, Ellie, sorry, we're out of time.
I love that. I think I also think about schools a lot as a future, and like different ways of learning, as like a hopeful idea for the future. I think when I think about past generations, I think about, in the context of this conversation, I think my mom taught me how to take care of things in a way that's so selfless, and it does translate to other things, from like the plants in my house to like a new person you meet who's like maybe going through a rough time. Like whenever I don't know how to respond, oh, you can come in. I'm always just like automatically doing what my mom has done. And so I learned this like way of taking care of other things, which is definitely my main motivation for interacting with the next generation in some way, is just like passing that on feels really important, just for my own relationship with her. Yeah, I guess that would be my 2 cents. It's a really nice question.
Thank you,
Well,
Francesca, for bringing us together and doing all of this, having these different conversations. It's not just about doing an exhibition or sharing work on the other side of the world, but it's making these connections and having these conversations otherwise wouldn't really happen, would they? And
yeah,
that's really exciting.
I had kind of a rough day today, and I was actually really looking forward to this because these conversations always, just fill me up with gratitude and hope. And it's so nice to see everything that you both are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you,
so
Ellie.
much,
I'm going to
Fran.
message you later.
Okay, yeah, you as well. Yeah, Fran, I hope you have a better day. And yeah, it's been so lovely. And thank you for organizing. And it's nice to see you.
Francesca, keep going. We need people like you in the museums and in these institutions,
Well, thanks. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. Everybody go enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.